Hello, welcome back to the Everything is Black and White podcast. I'm Andrew Musgrove, joined by John Gibson, and it's time for the match preview. Newcastle United welcome Manchester United to St James's Park on Wednesday evening in what is a huge game for Newcastle United's hopes for European football for next season. John, it's a pleasure to be back in front of you. It's been a little while. How are you keeping? You well?
Well, yes, nothing's much changed since you went away. We had the absolute elation followed quickly by reality. That's a Newcastle United life this season. I'm good. I'm hoping my team is as good as me come Wednesday night.
Fingers crossed. It's going to be a really, really tough game. Obviously, Manchester United have swapped managers. They've put Geordie boy Michael Carrick in charge, and he has hit the ground running, so much so that I reckon he's probably going to be their permanent manager, and then it'll all go wrong in 18 months' time. I'm dreading this one a little bit, John. Often people take the mick and say I'm quite optimistic sometimes with blind faith, but I am not looking forward to Wednesday.
Well, I mean, it's very difficult to. If you look at the two Uniteds, there's been such a change in both. I mean, Manchester United, we would have relished playing them a little while back. They come up here, roll over, and you tickle their tummy. But since Geordie lad's taken over, Michael Carrick, they've had 6 wins and a draw in 7 games, and they've soared up to 10th. Meanwhile, we are lounging in 13th place. And we've just lost 3 successive home Premier League games. I mean, the records couldn't be more contrasting between the two of us. And I must admit, it was like pricking a balloon for me to watch us play against Everton, because all the hope I'd stored up having watched us win 3 away games on the bounce just disintegrated, went back to what it was. The performance was absolutely awful. We shot ourselves in the foot. We were sloppy. Everything about us was poor. And yes, if you take it face value, the way they're going and the way we're playing at home now, then you have every right to be concerned.
When Michael Carrick took over at Manchester United, the two teams were level on points, if I'm not mistaken, and now Newcastle sitting 13th, as you mentioned there, on 36 points. Manchester United sitting comfortable in third on 51 points. He's done a really good job. You often do get that new manager bounce. Obviously, he's gone in and clearly things weren't great between the former manager and the players. And Michael Carrick's put his own style on it. Some would say he's just played the formation and the players that any manager worth his money would do. But whatever he's doing, John, it's working. And that kind of good feeling, that good spirit that they've got coming up to St James's Park on Wednesday, couple that with the spirit and the mood within the camp at Newcastle, going down to Everton in the fashion they did, their form of late, haven't won at home since beating Leeds nearly 2 months ago. You know, they're two very contrasting sides, and it's going to be difficult to beat a Manchester United who are flying high.
Oh, it is, because, I mean, look at us. In the 3 defeats we've had at home on the bounce in the Premier League, we let in 2 goals against Aston Villa, we let in 3 goals against Brentford and 3 goals against Everton. Now, with respect, none of those are elite opposition, not elite opposition. Villa have hit a poor spell of late, and they're a bit like us. It's staggering, because we started the season with 4 clean sheets in our first 5 league fixtures, and yet now we're leaking goals like there's no tomorrow, and leaking them so atrociously. I mean, the goals we give away within a minute of equalising, not once but twice against Everton, was absolutely awful. And if you take the comparisons as well, Andrew, between them and us, this spell where they're suddenly blossoming, Sesko, who we were after, has scored 7 goals in his last 8 games, including the winner against Crystal Palace just a couple of days back. In the meantime, Voltemada and Wissa just aren't scoring at all. The 2 blokes we did get for centre forward aren't scoring, and one of the blokes we didn't get can't stop scoring. So you look at that comparison as well, which isn't in our favour.
And often when we mention the opposition side and maybe talk them up, we say they've got X, Y, Z to fear. The comeback from maybe myself, you, John, our listeners and viewers will be, let's not worry about them. Let them worry about us. It's very hard to say that right now because you watch that game against Everton and you're looking at a system that doesn't appear to be working either defensively or going forward, and you're looking at individuals who are not only making errors that are costing Newcastle points, but also individuals who just do not look confident or happy. And again, I go back to the camp within the Manchester United team squad. Like, just couple that with how Newcastle are feeling at the moment, and it's very hard to kind of look for any positives going into this game.
Yeah, I mean, when Newcastle were doing well in the days of Joe Harvey and when we were doing well with Eddie, etc., I was a great believer. And look, let them worry about us. If we do our business correctly, we will be fine. But that's when we were fine. We're not at the moment, so you can't adopt that sort of attitude because, they're not going to worry about us. They're going to give us respect, but they're on the steamroller, that's steamrolling sides, and we're not. And, I've got to the situation where I've honestly got to say, and it isn't hindsight, when I got the team sheet for Everton and realised that Voldemort was going to play midfield and Joe Linton was going to play outside left, I was apprehensive because what Almiron was talked about at Manchester United, square pegs and round holes, etc., and Carrick's gone back to doing the obvious, which has worked brilliant. That team for me was not the obvious. And in fairness to Eddie, he changed it after half an hour because he realised it wasn't working. But I'm concerned, and I look at the team selection now. Having looked at that team and the way it played against Everton, my only hope, I think Lewis Hall ticks the boxes. I think Tonali, since Bruno's gone out, has stepped up to the plate and tried to run the midfield and try to do something about it in the absence of his skipper. And he ticks the boxes. But how many others are ticking the boxes? Pope doesn't tick the box. Trips is playing too often for his own good. The two centre-backs are getting exposed and we're letting in goals left, right and centre. The forwards were wingers. Elanga, I'm sorry, I just can't take to him at all. You know what? With Elanga and with Voldemort, I've looked for the good in them, Andrew. I've looked all season to see the good in them because that's what I wanted to find. I wanted to find that we had unearthed a couple of jewels that were going to just take a little bit of polishing and they were going to be fine. I'm 3/4 of the way through the season, and I'm sorry, I've got to say it the way I see it, and I don't see anything there. I really don't see anything there with either of them. And that's so disappointing because I've tried desperately to give them the benefit of the doubt because I want them to work. I still want them to work. But I don't know why. While you're saying, where do we look with Newcastle United as a team, and I couldn't agree more at this given moment, they are a typical example of I don't know where to look to see the best in those two guys. And it's not just those two. You can go throughout the team, but they're a typical example. And they were big money in the summer, real big money.
And I guess the issues that you've mentioned there, Nick Pope, Kieran Trippier, Voldemort, Elanga, they're only issues that can be solved in the summer. But in the present time, Newcastle United and Eddie Howe need to find a solution to make sure that next season they are playing European football. And I guess, John, that's probably the real big question about Wednesday night before we get into team selection and all of that is just how big of a game this is for Newcastle United's hopes for qualification, and not just for the Champions League, but for the Europa League and Europa Conference for the next campaign.
I mean, they've squandered chance after chance after chance to get into Europe. We've just lost 3 successive home Premier League sides. This was supposed to be our fortress. Our problem was playing away from home. We have lost 3 successive home Premier League sides. I mean, we're not going to make the Champions League. Everton almost stopped us making the Champions League last season when they won up here on the last day of the season, dropped us to 5th. And it was only the incompetence of Aston Villa, who imploded on that last day, that got us into the Champions League. They have killed us, sister. We are not going to we may as well accept now, if we beat Manchester United, etc., we're not going to make the Champions League. It's whether we can make the Europa League and the conference. And don't tell me we're X number of points off there and so forth, so then we can do it. Excuse me, the evidence of my eyes tells it we're not consistent enough to make up enough ground to be in the top 5 this season. I think that's a step too far, and we've got to accept that while keep going. The worry now is that we don't get into Europe at all if we're 13th. Actually, if you look at points, we're closer to the team that's 3rd bottom if the Premier League than we are the team that's 5th top, which is the last Champions League position. That's the reality of this. And we have spent the majority of this season, Andrew, in the bottom half, albeit the top of the bottom half, of the table. So, there's nothing that says that we're certainly not going to make the Champions League. We've got to try to make one of the other two, because the other two are winnable. The consolation in going in, I mean, they are the poor man's Europe compared to the Champions League, both financially and in terms of glamour. There's some awful matches against obscure sides early on in both the Europa League and the conference. But we're capable of winning it. West Ham won under Moyes in Europe through being in the foothills rather than at the major table. So let's get in it and try to win it. But it's going to take some doing. And every time we think we've got a chance, we'll blow the points.
You mentioned there Fortress St James's Park and how at the moment it's far from that. What is the issue? Because like you said, the home form was kind of the saviour of the season in many ways, given how bad the away form was. And, teams hated coming here. But there just seems to be an issue, I think, both on the pitch and off it in the terraces as well. And obviously the players have to give the fans something to shout about. It's not because some of the supporters. You and I are supporters, John. We want to be entertained. We want to be given something to get off the edge of our seats. And at the moment, that's not happening. Why are the players struggling so badly at a place where, every time they ran out, you'd be betting your last penny they would be winning? Not the case now.
I think they've lost their edge. They've lost their excitement. They've got used over 4 years of Eddie and 4 years of the Saudi and the wonderful times we've had in it. And it's almost become like, can we go again? Can we get excited game by game? They'll raise themselves in the Champions League, where, by the way, the standard has been well below Premier League level outside of Paris Saint-Germain and Barcelona. So let's get that right. And we've had good draws in the Carrick Cup when we got to the semi-final, and we're one match off the quarter-final in the FA Cup. When we get the glamour sort of one-off games, we raise our game, or we seem to. But going through the slog of 38 Premier League games over weeks and months, we no longer lift our game in the way that we used to do. We no longer have that edge. You look at individuals who are playing on reputations they got here originally. Is Bachmann as good as the Bachmann that was? Is Byrne as good as the one that was? Is Gordon having the impact that he had this last season or the season before? Is Murphy having that impact that he had last season when he was wonderful? Are we doing that anymore? Is Tonali's raised his game a little bit again? Holt's ticking the boxes, as I've said. Trips is not the man he was. Of course he isn't. You can't expect. He's 36, for goodness sake. Is Pope suddenly looking a little bit different? When we're living in the main, players are living on the reputation that they got originally and not that they deserve today. And I don't know that the edge, the desire, the I mean, just take Gordon as an example. What he was when he was bubbling, when he was twisting and turning and creating havoc. And does his body language tell you that he's still as thrilled as that? He's still got that naive joy of playing for us and we get a bit. And that's not just Anthony Gordon. You look across the scene and I say, do players look what they look before? Do they look excited? Do they look up for it? Lack of concentration, making mistakes. I mean, it's a cardinal sin in football to concede just after you equalise because you dig in and we did it not once, we did it twice against Everton. I think that if you were judging some of the players on their form this season, you wouldn't give them the reputation that they've earned in the past. Gordon's reputation wouldn't be as high. Murphy's wouldn't be as high, and you go on. Trippier's obviously wouldn't be as high. Would Byrne and Botman be as high as they were originally? I'm not saying they're bad players now, but I'm saying they're not at their zenith at the moment and haven't been, Andrew, all season.
And I guess the question, John, is what is the remedy? What is the solution? I'm seeing a lot of people on social media over the last kind of 24, 48 hours calling for kind of a mass fire sale, keeping maybe 5, 6 of the core of the team and then getting everyone else out. I mean, if we're being totally honest and realistic, that's just never going to happen. That's not the way football works, because you need to find a buyer. You need to have a player who's willing to go, and then the finances need to work for everyone. Newcastle aren't going to write off, 20, 30 million on a player. So let's say a Langer, for instance, just because it hasn't worked this season. A, because that's a lot of money to spend, and B, because you're not going to find a buyer to recuperate the price you've paid. And there's a lot of players in that position. And also, you can't just ship out 12, 13 players and then expect Newcastle United to replace 12 or 13 players in the summer. Not the way it works, although I get the kind of train of thought. That in mind, John, what is the solution? Is it a total reset that's needed?
Well, I mean, there's two problems here, isn't there? One problem is getting through now to the end of the season when you can't do any of that because the transfer window isn't open. But you've somehow, because you've got the FA Cup and the Champions League, and then 8 or 10 Premier League matches. So you've got to get through this season. Now, that's a major problem for Eddie Howe. What does he do? What's his team selection? Then come the summer, you've got a whole new problem. Who you get out and who you get in. And you can't have a mass turnover. Having said that, and it didn't work, and reality is set in, down the road at Sunderland had a mass turnover when they come up. They signed about 15 players and got rid of goodness. But that was startling, and we didn't know any of the players they brought in, apart from Xhaka. We didn't know any of them. And it worked initially, but they're now suddenly finding it's a whole new ball game, and over a season, that's what happens. So it won't happen like that. But it is frightening, Andrew, because the more I'm watching them, we've got to sign at least a couple of goalkeepers. We've got to sign a right back. We've got to have cover for the left back. We need a midfielder. We need a centre forward now, and we've just signed 2 in the summer for a fortune. We still need to buy a centre forward in this summer, and we need to buy an outside right this summer. You're virtually wanting to buy every position again, and as you say, it doesn't quite work like that. It is a massive problem, and it's a twofold problem. There's the problem of now, and there's the problem of the summer.
Indeed. And getting back to the present, we'll go through the potential team in a moment. Just a reminder, ladies and gents, that this episode is sponsored by NordVPN and Saily. 2 key products for you to take away on holiday. 1, NordVPN, giving you that added extra element of security while browsing on public Wi-Fi, and Saily providing the eSIM and network coverage at an affordable price with 200 destinations to choose from. You can get an exclusive discount offer on both products by hitting the links in the podcast description box. John, I do always enjoy asking you what the team is going to be. We never ever know with Eddie Howe, and if Saturday's team sheet is anything to go by, then it could be another interesting lineup on Wednesday. I mean, look, we can say despite the poor performance and errors on Saturday, Nick Pope will start in goal. You would imagine it'll be Kieran Trippier, Malik Chow, Dan Burn, Lewis Hall. I think that will be the back line. maybe I don't. I mean, I'm not. I mean, I've been out the loop for 3 weeks. I'm not really sure where Botman is. Was he on the bench on Saturday?
Yes, he was on the bench. He's fit.
Okay, so there's a chance he might come in. I mean, would you bring him in?
I was going to say, if you asked me the team, Andrew, it's like you start naming it there. If you asked me the team, I would then say to you, am I supposed to guess Eddie Howe's team, or am I supposed to guess my team? Because if it's Eddie Howe's team, I do say, yes, it's going to be Pope, and yes, it's going to be Trippier. If you're starting my team, it's not as simple as that. I mean, I would play Ramsdale. Simply because something's got to happen. And also, with the crowd as well as the rest of the team, whenever the ball goes to Pope, or Pope's got to make a save on Wednesday night, the jitters and the ironic cheers when he does make a save, which is awful for the lad. And I mean, I can understand that. That will occur, and that will then that worry will get into the team because it'll be on the terraces. And I would just protect them by doing that. Protect them by doing that for this particular game. Do you play Botman instead of Byrne? You'll end up playing Trips, although Murphy can play in that position, but you'll end up with Trips. You'll end up with Hall because he's one of the few pluses. Do you go Chow and Byrne, or Chow and Botman? Midfield, I think Trelawney and Joe Linton are two obvious starters. My third, if he's available, would be Ramsey. But is he going to be fit after feeling ill and having to come off at the start of the second half? Is he going to be available? If he is, I would go Tonali, Ramsey and Joe Linton. Up front, well, for goodness sake, I would go Murphy, Gordon, and probably Barnes, although I think he's well out of his bubbly best. I think he is treading water. And Willock could cover for Ramsey in midfield if Ramsey can't make it, or if Ramsey does make it, Willock could come in for Barnes if necessary at outside left. I think Harvey is not the player he was a few weeks back. I think he's treading water a little bit. And he's always, if you look at his career, Andrew, he's always had a career like that, where he goes bang, 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 and scores goals and everybody's pulled, and then he has a very barren period of it, and sometimes he needs to be pulled out. But the two things I want to happen, and it's not because I've got a crusade, because I'm so desperate for every Newcastle player to do well, it's untrue. But you can't start, for me, you can't start Voldemort or Langer in this game. Please, Eddie, wherever you might play Voldemort, in midfield or up front, and Langer, please don't do it. Not this. Give them a rest. Get them out of the picture. Don't start them.
Two key points to take away from that, John, is that you're making in your team two huge decisions in terms of bringing Ramsdale in and sticking with Gordon up top. And the reality of the situation is that you're making that not out of a kind of a choice of, I guess, want, or because either Gordon or Ramsdale have been in great form and you've gone, oh, you know, they're in because they're doing brilliant. You're doing it because the alternative, either Pope or Voldemort or Wissa, have been that poor that you're looking at the kind of the best of a bad option, really.
Andrew, you're absolutely 100% correct. I mean, I don't want Ramsdale to be keeping goal for Newcastle next season. I think he goes back to his parent club, and I have already said in this podcast, we've got to buy a centre forward in the summer, because Gordon's not the answer there. But neither, in my humble opinion, is Voldemort. Definitely not, and Wissa, unless he suddenly blossoms because the injury gets left totally behind him, etc., etc. That's why we have two problems. The problem is now, and the problem is the summer. And yes, but not just those two, like Ramsdale and Gordon. There's other positions where I'm playing somebody. I don't want Trippier to be right back next season, Andrew, but I've just picked him in my side for Manchester United because there isn't an alternative or a better alternative. And that is the awful position I think we're in as of today.
Yeah, it's an unwanted nightmare really for Eddie Howe. I thought when Gordon went on to the left against Everton, he looked better than he did up top, although the bar isn't very high to come to that conclusion. I'd be tempted to start him on the left and go up against the fullbacks. And then it is a question of, do you stick with Voldemort despite it not working? I discussed on the Monday show with Sean that, if you're to do that, then the instruction that I would deliver is actually Gordon and Murphy, or Gordon and Lang, whoever it is, just get closer to Voldemort. Although I don't think how
if they get closer to Voldemort, they'll be playing in midfield.
Yeah, but at the moment, I think Voldemort is isolated up top, and I think he needs players around him who are going to run on.
I'm sorry, I won't give him that excuse anymore. I'm sick of it. I am utterly sick of it. I won't give him the excuse that he's isolated, because a lot of the time he isn't isolated because he plays so deep from playing centre forward. I mean, Eddie was sort of saying that when he played midfield on against Everton and then up front, we didn't get him into the game. I pose another question. Why doesn't he get himself into the game? Why doesn't he go hunting for the ball and look the part? They're already made. I have never heard so many excuses as I hear for Big Nick. He's isolated. He's got wonderful feet. He's got this. He's got that. He's got the other. He's a £69 million centre forward that's going to go to the World Cup with Germany, etc., etc. So let's see it. It cannot always be other people's fault. Sometimes you've got to impose yourself on the game. Did Shearer impose himself on the game? Did Supermac impose himself on the game? Did Andy Cole impose himself? Sometimes you impose yourself on the game. You don't stand there like a milk bottle and say, well, give us some support and I'll be good. And it doesn't work like that. I mean, Isaac, who we know is not the flavour of the week, but he scored piles of goals for us. He did his own thing. He worried defenders. It wasn't just the service Isaac got. It was that Isaac could do it. It's not in Voldemort's armory to do it. He's one pace. I'll come back to banging the same gong. How on earth did the Newcastle people behind the scenes decide that Voldemort, with his total lack of pace, would fit automatically into a side built exclusively on pace? Who decided that? Because it's the exact opposite to what is the way we play when we are at our best.
I would invite people to go over to chroniclelive.co.uk, and I'll pop the link into the podcast description box as well. John's column after the Everton game, where I don't think John will mind me saying you've gone pretty hard on Elanga and Voldemort. Is it? I mean, is it fair? I mean, is it fair on Voldemort? I get that he's not.
Of course it is. He's a £69 million club record buy. I'm sick of pussyfooting round people and saying, what is not fair on Voldemort, Andrew, is that Newcastle bought him to play in their side, because everything he's got that's worth having doesn't fit in, and what he hasn't got is what this side demands. I mean, Eddie can sprinkle stardust on him. He can get him on the training ground for the next fortnight if we didn't play a solitary single game and work with him. Do you think he could put pace in him? Do you think you could make him a player that presses? We don't press successfully this season like we did last season, because to press successfully, everybody's got to press. If one guy doesn't press, it doesn't work. And Nick cannot press. I mean, I'm not being nasty about the guy. In my humble opinion, Alan Shearer and Malcolm MacDonald know one or two things about playing centre forward, and I know what their private thoughts are about Voldemort. Not as a person, not can he has he got a decent touch or whatever, but the sort of player he is playing in the Newcastle team, and it's just ludicrous.
Let us know in the comments your thoughts on Voldemort. I guess, and this will be a question for another episode at the end of the season. I feel like a big conversation has to happen surrounding Voldemort. It's the question of, is he going to be Newcastle United's long-term centre forward, maybe number 10? And do we build a team around him to adapt into his style? And if not, then do we just cut our losses and say, it was the wrong move? That'll be a conversation, John, for another time. I'm going to get your prediction in a moment. And before I do that, I'm just going to deliver a little stat that will hopefully bring some optimism to what has been a rather down in the dumps podcast about Wednesday night. Newcastle have won the last 3 home Premier League games against Manchester United, as many as in their previous 18 combined. The Magpies last had a longer home league winning run against Manchester United between 1915 and 1931, which was 10 games. So that might change your feeling about Wednesday. It probably won't. How's it going to go?
Well, the things that bother me, the stats that I think impact on the game aren't the stats about Newcastle's wonderful record against Manchester United, but the fact that they've won 6 and drawn 1 of their last 7, and we've lost our last 3 home Premier League games. I think those are much more relevant in determining the mood of both the sides and the current form of both the sides. Not that we have a wonderful record against Manchester United and something might have happened in 1930. I don't think that's going to have any impact come Wednesday night when we kick off. I would love, by the way, to think so. I mean, I really, really do. I mean, it breaks my heart to talk about Newcastle the way we've just done so. But we're crying out for help again, and we're crying out. I mean, if I was Eddie, Eddie must feel the same way. When I was picking my team, I would sit down and start looking at other things, not just former heart, courage, desire, people that want to do it, people that won't be afraid of the occasion, because that's what's going to get us through, isn't it? Bravery and stout hearts and a desire to do well. That will cover up a certain lack of ability in certain positions, and it's what we need. But yes, it is a very, I mean, if we are brutally truthful, and you said it in another way, Andrew, by saying, look, here's something to give us a little bit of heart, here's our record against Manchester United. To be truthful, it's only my favourite phrase, blind faith, that we're all going to hang on to in this game, which is things like we've said before, Newcastle have been so bad recently, and they can raise their game for the big game. And on the law of averages, Newcastle aren't going to lose 4 Premier League home games on the bounce, are they? And Manchester United, can it keep going unbeaten under Michael Carrick? Can they? So this result will be different for those 2 reasons. But it's blind faith rather than pointing and saying, I saw enough against Everton and I saw enough against Brentford to say we will do the business on Wednesday night because we are the better team.
Ooh, okay. So I'm struggling, John. I have to be honest. I think my hope is that, given that I think this is a must win in terms of European qualification, I like you. I think you can write off the Champions League, and then it's down to the next couple of competitions. And I think losing on Wednesday would make qualification via the Premier League extremely difficult. Either having to finish 6th, 7th, or 8th. And I'm hoping that kind of motivation and that realization of that dawns on them in the next 24 hours, 48 hours, and then come 8:15 on Wednesday, that's kind of kicked them into gear under the lights at St James's Park. And we find that kind of siege mentality that this Eddie Howe side is known for. And in many ways, saying that they get up for these kind of games because it's against the big sides is actually a negative, because we want Newcastle United to be a big side. We don't want to have to get up for it because it's just what we do. However, that's not where they're at the moment. So if I was going with my heart, I'm going to say a draw. I'm going to go with my head. I think the 2 teams and the moods are just so far apart that I can't see anything other than a Manchester United victory, if I'm being honest.
I know exactly where you're coming from. And, to a great extent, I feel exactly that. But I'm hanging on the fact, are Manchester United as good as 6 wins and a draw from the last 7? or the over punching. And also, can we lose 4 Premier League home games on the bounce? I mean, with 3, we're going back to Steve Bruce in the dark days. That's when that last happened. So on the law of averages that they cannot keep doing this and we can't keep doing that, I'm desperately hanging on for a draw. 1-1, or the way we defend, it might have to be 2-2. But I mean, the best I'm hoping for is a draw. And I can follow totally why the way things have gone, we lose again. But goodness gracious me. So I'm going to hang in there for a draw.
Yeah, well, fingers crossed we get the draw, and we'll hope for more if possible. Just quickly looking at the last time Newcastle United lost 4 on the bounce at home, you've got to go back to August 2018 and a run that ended in October of that year. They lost to Chelsea at home, they lost to Arsenal, they lost to Leicester, they lost to Brighton. That was 4 on the bounce, and they finally picked up a win against Watford. Iosi Perez getting a goal on 65 minutes, and followed that up, John, with a win over Bournemouth 2-1, where Salman Rondon got a double. So there you go. Fingers crossed they don't make it to 4 defeats at home on the bounce in the Premier League. Thank you very much, John, for popping on. Thank you to you guys for watching and listening. Do get into the comments, and myself and John will be back later in the week to talk about Newcastle United versus Manchester City yet again. You lucky, lucky people. Until then, we'll see you.